Well, welcome to this month's Rotary Professional Development Program. And we are about a year into COVID. And if you think about it, a year ago we were all thinking, isn't this weird to be doing meetings on Zoom? And now I'm here thinking, isn't this weird to be standing at a podium with a microphone? So this morning we're going to be talking about the new Rotary Toastmasters partnership. And first we'll look at the modules that are available to us Rotarians on the My Rotary website. And then secondly, we're going to demonstrate a model Toastmasters meeting to see if that would be of interest to you. Now, as part of that process, I'll give some take-home points on how to be a relaxed public speaker. And Nancy Reese is going to give some take-home points on leadership. And then Mike Leahy is actually going to give a real Toastmaster speech. And then Molly Rydell is going to do table topics, which will give us a chance to speak spontaneously. So first of all, the Rotary Toastmasters co-branded modules on the My Rotary website. In terms of professional development, I think these are actually game changers. They are excellent. How many people have been on the MyRotary.org website? Great. I think every Rotarian should look at every module. They are that good. The excellent thing is they are designed by Rotarians and by Toastmasters for us. So the My Rotary website, remember it's myrotary.org. You sign on, and then you see the Learning and Reference Center. The banner has Learning and Reference Center. You click on that, and then you see in the drop-down menu, Learning Center, and that's where all of these modules are. And at the moment, there are 7 modules. There is planning a speech, delivering a speech, leadership basics, how to lead a team, and collaboration, etc. And they are excellent, as I've said. Each takes about an hour and a half, and it gives you a lot of practical information and pointers. But of course, the Toastmasters methodology is always to give you an assignment. And guess what the assignment is for delivering a speech? It's to deliver a speech. What's the assignment for leading a team? It's to lead a team. And I found this Lead a Team module, which I was checking out, very helpful. It talked about team building. It talked about brainstorming and when that's effective. And it mentioned it's very important to be clear in your own mind, which is more important, the project or the team. And usually it's the team. And we've all been on teams, and we've all led teams, but I can't remember anyone actually telling me how to do it. Never in high school or college, certainly not in medical school. I was thinking, maybe in the Boy Scouts. I'll have to go back and review Handbook for Patrol Leaders. But enough about the Toastmasters modules, but check them out. I think they're great. The second part of the program is we're going to demonstrate for you a Toastmasters program, and I will now introduce Steve Rogers, who will serve as our Toastmaster this morning as we demonstrate a Toastmasters meeting. And Steve will introduce the agenda and the rest of the team. Because a Toastmasters club doesn't just give you a chance to practice public speaking. Every meeting is a meeting. It has an agenda. Everyone gets a chance to speak practically. There are reports, etc. And the Toastmaster, Steve, gets practice at running a meeting. So our Toastmaster of the day, Steve Rogers, has been a Rotarian for 37 years. And early in his career, he was a Toastmaster as an insurance agent. He was having to give presentations to new insurance agents, and Toastmasters helped him do that. So please welcome our fellow Toastmaster, Steve Rogers, our fellow Rotarian, Steve Rogers. And we always clap.
Thank you, President Hux, for getting involved in Toastmaster meetings. For us to do this is a real benefit to all of us as a Rotarian. Today, our first part will be 3 speeches, and that'll begin our meeting. And then second part of our meeting is table topics, and then a third part, evaluation, and then finish up with happy news. Today, we have Word of the Day from Russell Smith. I'd like to invite him up.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. A part of the Toastmasters meeting is the Word of the Day. The Word of the Day is a challenge to all of our speakers to make use of the day's word to invigorate their speaking, because vivid and distinctive words bring power and clarity to your speaking. But the challenge continues. It continues throughout the whole week. It's a challenge for all of us to look for opportunities to make use of the word of the day in your conversation, in your presentations, and your communication all throughout the week. So, ready? Today's word is slipshod. Slipshod means shabby, careless, or slovenly. So, for example, his ideas are provocative, but his slipshod research undermines his credibility. Or another example, the company's bankruptcy came as a result of slipshod accounting practices. So there you have it, slipshod. Make every effort to work slipshod into your speeches today and into your conversations this week. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
First speech will be by Hux Miller, joined Club 17 11 years ago and served on the board for 3 years. Hux has been a president of his local Toastmasters Club. Hux' greatest adventure in public speaking recently was given a series of medical lectures and doctors in Madagascar and France. Hux will speak to us on how to relax in public speaking. Hux Miller.
Well, I think one way to relax in public speaking is to speak in your own native language. I had to give these lectures in French, and I actually practiced at my Toastmasters Club. And I found that very helpful because it at least taught me that I could stand up and speak French. And I remember my evaluator said he didn't understand a word of what I'd said, but it seemed like I knew what I was talking about. So that was Toastmasters. So how to be a relaxed public speaker? Well, it helps to be prepared. Now in Toastmasters, we do practice spontaneous speaking, and you'll get a chance to see that with Molly showing us table topics. But if you're giving something like this, you have to be prepared. If you're prepared, you feel better about it. And the general rule, which Nancy Reese mentioned last week, is it takes an hour for every minute. And that sounds excessive, but that's why you can't do a 10-minute speech with an hour's presentation. If you're going to do the invocation, it'll probably take you an hour. So preparation. How do you prepare? Well, I have a friend, Lorna Jordan, and Lorna was for many years a reporter for National Public Radio. And she gave a presentation at our church on how to write anything, how to write a news report, how to write a thank you note. And Lorna said something that I took away from that it's very difficult if you're just looking at a blank page of paper to get started. So Lorna explained, don't start with a blank page of paper, start with the back of an envelope. And on the back of the envelope, you just write down thoughts, ideas, words, things you might want to cover. And then that lets you brainstorm a little bit in a relaxed way. And then from that, you can go ahead and write your rough draft. So I was thinking, what were my back of the envelope ideas as I was preparing for this particular speech? How to be a relaxed public speaker. Take a deep breath before you start. Smile. Pretend you're just talking to one person. Keep it simple. Be organized. That helps you. That helps the audience. Stand up straight. Be confident. Practice until you're confident. Write it out. Revise it. Organize it. Take notes on it. Try to give your speech from the notes. And how to be relaxed if you're not prepared. That's a horse of a different color. So these were some of the ideas that I wanted to put into this speech. Now, preparing. For me, I find it very helpful to write things out. And that helps me be linear, it helps me be organized. But my first draft is always terrible. And if I gave that first draft, it wouldn't be any better than just standing up and speaking spontaneously. Now, you can stand up and speak spontaneously, but what you find is that you forget to say things that you wanted to say, and you say things that you didn't want to say. So very helpful to write it down. And then, once I've got the first thing written, I find it actually relatively enjoyable to go through and just fix it. And remember, this is the day of Microsoft Word. We're not talking about coercible bond. How many people here remember coercible bond? Oh, okay. But do you remember when they invented coercible bond? Okay, that was a big moment when they invented coercible bond. And generally, as you're doing your second draft, it becomes more logical, easier to follow. And then the other thing I find is it becomes a little bit more like me, that it's more my thoughts and my words that I would use. There are a couple of ways to organize a talk. The most common is topical. Say you have to give a talk on the Rotary picnic. You have 3 or 4 topics. It is on July 1st. It starts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It is at Camp Allen. The weather is going to be beautiful, and get your reservations in by Friday. That's a topical speech, and that's usually how we do it. The other way to organize a speech, which is very good if the speech can be organized this way, is chronologically. You're sort of telling a story. And that makes it easier for you to tell it, easier for you to remember it, easier for your audience to remember it. And this is sort of a chronological speech. I mean, how to start your speech, how to organize a speech. So once you have your second draft, then you can start practicing your speech. And you want to make sure that if it's designed to be a 10-minute speech, if it's supposed to be a 10-minute speech, it's actually a 10-minute speech, because you don't want to go for 15 minutes. And if you're going to be giving the speech standing up, you want to practice the speech standing up. And if you have time, you take notes on your speech and you give your speech from your notes. That's clearly the best way to do it, because then you're both prepared, but you're also spontaneously. Now, slides. If you use slides in your speech, make sure that your speech comes first, that your slides are about your speech rather than your speech being about your slides. Now, you don't need to memorize your speech, but you do want to be very clear on what your introduction is going to be and what your conclusion is going to be. Because your points, if you're prepared, you can sort of wing those. But your introduction, if there's some sort of catch to catch people's interest, you don't want to wing that. And if there's some sort of action step at the end, you don't want to wing that. You want to have some punch. Give me liberty or give me death. That had punch. So, delivering a speech. Now, why deliver a speech? Why not just send a memo? Well, it's because with your voice and your body and your gestures, it has more impact. So, a few things to remember. You always want to get to the place a few minutes early. And if you got here early, you saw all of us figuring out, like, where are we going to stand? What are we going to do with the microphone? You don't want to be rushed by that because that will make you nervous. So, and then also, always make sure that the person who is going to introduce you, you're in charge of that introduction. You want to give that to the Toastmaster in this case, because that's sort of setting up your speech. That's saying who you are, why you might be good at talking about this, and what the topic is. And as you move toward the podium, remember to smile, because your speech has already started. So smile, look confident. So stand up straight, you're alert, you're in command, your shoulders are square, your chest is out, your stomach is in. Your weight is even on your legs, but you're not locked. You're in the athletic position, your knees are a little loose. If somebody threw you a football, you would be able to catch a football. So, starting. Very, very interesting, if you're feeling a little nervous, you take a deep breath. Everybody who's watching this, take a deep breath. You feel more relaxed when you do that. Plus, you're about to give a speech, so it's probably helpful to have air able to move in and out. And you want to keep your head up. Remember what your choir director always says. Don't sing into the hymnal. Sing out over the hymnal, because you're trying to get air to come out through your pharynx. It doesn't help if you're going like this. And as you're giving your speech, keep looking at individual people around the room so that you're not staring at one person all the time, but you can look at one person and say one thing and then turn to the next person and say something else. Gestures. Your gestures should be natural. What do I mean by unnatural? Remember Richard Nixon? That's sort of an unnatural gesture. Don't vote for people like that. Vocal variety. You obviously don't want to talk in a monotone, and there's some really excellent exercises on this Toastmaster module where it talks about varying pitch. You can talk in a very high voice sometimes, or you can talk in a low voice. You can talk in a happy way, or you can talk in a sad way. You can talk quickly, or you can talk slowly. You can talk loudly, or you can talk softly. And these are all techniques that, as you practice them, they become more easier to use in your speech. So, if you do these modules, the project that Toastmasters suggests is to give a speech. And one of the good things about the Rotary Club here is that there are a lot of opportunities to give speeches. Not only the president is speaking, but the person who is introducing guests, the sergeant at arms. And one of the things that Toastmasters say is never give up an opportunity to come up to the lectern and speak. So you want to be looking for opportunities to give speeches, because that's how you improve, and that's how you become a more relaxed speaker. So if you want to become a more relaxed public speaker, look at these modules and take every opportunity to speak publicly, and consider joining Toastmasters. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Hux. Scientist, business coach, professional speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Nancy Reese is a trendsetter and thought leader who inspires her clients to think in new ways. With 35 years of clinical and corporate healthcare roles as an entrepreneur, Nancy is known for blending innovative business strategies with challenge and inspiration. Nancy founded Success Catalyst in 1993, where her mission is to help her clients work less, enjoy it more, and make more money. Get ready for high energy, information-packed presentation with solid recommendations to achieve top-notch performance and improve bottom-line results. What else would you expect from a scientist turned MBA, business owner who drives a convertible, has adopted 7 St. Bernards and 1 Great Pyrenees dogs, and cut her hair short so she could spend more time swimming, playing golf, and trailblazing. Nancy speaks to us about leadership. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Toastmaster Steve. That's a great way to start. I have a question for all of you. So when you think of, if I say, think about a leader that you admire, who comes to mind for you? Anyone care to share? Oh, forgot this. John F. Kennedy, great. Thanks, Hux. Anybody else? Oops. Anyone else? All right, well, I have some great ones. As many of us in our Rotary Club. I think any of our presidents are great leaders for us. We have our president nominee in the room with us, Steve, a great leader for us. And one person that comes to mind, too, as I was thinking about this, is Sam Schutte. I mean, not only is he doing awesome things to recycle waste, he came up with this phenomenal idea of a virtual tip jar to help all the people that worked in the hospitality industry, particularly the restaurants, make some income, which was really important. So, really think about, who do you think is a leader and why do you think they're a leader? My next question for you is, when I asked you who you thought was a good leader, did you include yourself in that? If you did, great. If you did not, why not? Do you not think of yourself as a leader? Because if you don't think of yourself as a leader, no one else will. So it has to start with you. It really is, it is all about you and who you think you are. So today as I talk about leadership, it's a huge topic. In about 10 minutes, I'm supposed to call down like millions of books, hundreds of articles, thousands of books, millions of articles, podcasts, YouTube videos, publications, speeches. I mean, it's just so huge that there's probably more things on leadership than there are about grains of sand that are on the beach these days. But because leadership is the most important, really, aspect of any role that you have, whether you are a manager, whether you are a business owner, whether you are a parent, whether you are someone who is in charge of a religious organization, whether you're leading a community organization, or whether you're just in charge up here for Rotary a day, you are being a leader. And it's really important that you understand what leadership is about. Now, for me, there was a person that I met when I was part of the National Speakers Association named Stan Slapp. And I really, really like Stan's definition of leadership. Stan says that a leader is a person that has a vision that is so compelling and that they're so passionate about a better future that they see for themselves and other people. And they have the ability to communicate that vision so that people want to follow them. Because remember, if you do not have followers, you truly are not a leader. And so it has to be things that you get people behind you and doing what you're talking about. That's really important. So we all have a vision. We all have a dream. We all have new ideas. But based on my 35 plus years in the business world and as a person, leader in a lot of different situations, the really important part of Stan's definition is being able to communicate your vision to the people that you need following you. So again, whether you're a manager and you're trying to express your expectations, or whether you are a parent and you're trying to help your children understand what's necessary for them, in any role we have, what's really most important is we have to help them see What's in it for them? And it really has to be about them. But you also have to know how to communicate it. So that's really where I'm going to spend most of my time today, is really talking about the communication part of being a leader. Because everything we do is communication. Whether we're saying something or not saying something, whether we're using gestures, or making faces, whatever we're doing, if we're sitting there with our arms crossed, we're sitting there very relaxed, everything we do is communicating something to someone. It may not be what we think we're communicating to them, but we are communicating something to someone. So, as you're thinking about vision and communication, I have another question for you. Why did you join Rotary? What made you decide that you wanted to become a Rotarian? Well, as I was looking at different organizations to join, I was really looking at things like, what is their vision? And if you think about Rotary's vision of being a leader who makes an impact on our club, our community, and our world, that was pretty impressive to me. I mean, to think about that, not only could I make an impact on my club or the people I'm with most, but in my community, which I care about, and to the world. I mean, I really love to travel, I love to see things, so that was really important to me. But the thing that really clinched it for me is Rotary's motto, service above self. And if we think about that, it really does communicate a very strong message. So, and as Steve mentioned, I really love, I don't know whether you have ever had any bad bosses in your life. And as they say that we join a company, but we leave a boss. Well, I just had a passion for eliminating bad bosses in our world, because I had more than my fair share of them. One of my favorites was Attila the Nun. That was fun. But anyway, let's move on to the second part of Stan's definition of being a leader, is having that ability to communicate. So how many times have you been really excited about going to see someone that you consider a quote-unquote leader, and it's a topic that you really want to learn about, and you come away kind of disappointed, maybe not only by what they said, but how they said it. They didn't keep your attention. You were deflated, and you thought, wow. So I don't want you to ever be in that place. And so that's why I really encourage you to think about the modules that Toastmasters has shared with Rotary, so it can really help you to write a really great speech. There are so many elements to being a great leader, and my top 10 lists include being visionary, being inspiring, being values-based, and being accountable. Accountable is a big thing for anybody that knows me. Also, it's really important to have a big picture vision and to be thinking about the future. Self-aware. We have to know what our strengths and what our weaknesses are. Integrity, flexibility, open-mindedness, and courage. But again, I'm going to go back to that last one. That's the communication skills. So I'm going to try to make this a little bit easier for you to think about if we mix and blend all of those different traits I talked about, and there's many, many more that make a good leader, that I want you to think about just these three-step process. And the first step of the three-step process is know your why for doing what you are doing and your vision. It's also known as your vision. And one of my favorite people is Simon Sinek. He's a British-American author, and his big thing is, what's your why? And I've kind of stolen it a little, maybe borrowed it is a better term, and really ask people, what is your why? Because if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, what is getting you out of bed in the morning? And how excited are you about that? So I think it's really important to know your why. And it can be really simple, as I want to be the best parent, I want to be the best teacher, I want to be the best business owner, or it can be something grandiose, as like I want to eliminate poverty from our community, or even bigger, something around the world. But knowing your why, that's really important so that people know what you're passionate about and that you're so excited about it and that you cannot wait to share it with others. The second step is be able to inspire others to want to do this with you. As I mentioned before, if you don't have followers, you aren't truly a leader. And if you aren't really excited about what you're doing, do you think anyone's going to want to follow you? Probably not. And so how is the work going to get done? So you want to be able to share that vision, being able to tell people what's in it for them, and help them understand how they're going to be able to contribute, but also what impact it's going to make for them. Why should they be excited about what you're doing? It's your why. You have to be able to communicate to them why should they make it their why. The third step is develop your people. Anybody that knows me knows that's my mantra. Your people are the most important thing. My book is titled People Count. I've been preaching this for many of my years. But leaders don't only create followers. It really is the job of a leader to create more leaders. You need other people that are capable of taking on things. You can't do it all. And so you really want to focus on how are you creating more leaders. And this really happens when you care for and support the people. You carefully listen to the people that you're with. And help them understand that their part in getting the work done. And I have a saying that says, if you take care of your people, the people take care of you and your business or your organization. Because if they feel inspired and motivated and excited, they will do the work. If not, chances are it's not going to happen. So I want to follow up with Simon Sinek's quote that I really like. He says that leadership is a way of thinking, a way of acting, and most importantly, a way of communicating. So again, it's that communication part that keeps coming into things. Now, it's no great surprise to any of you that are watching that most of us as leaders spend a lot of our time communicating. It's really the overwhelming majority of our day we're spent talking to someone. And whether it's an interpersonal conversation, whether it's on the phone, whether we're talking to someone in a meeting, whether we're talking to our board, whatever it is, we're talking to them people. So it'll come as no great shock to you that there is some miscommunication. Anybody ever have any miscommunications in their life? Oh yeah, I can think of a few just this morning. But if you're effective, those become less. And so that's also the really important part, because miscommunication is expensive. It's probably where more money is wasted in a business, in any relationship. It's also the reason why relationships end more than any other reason. So think about, how are you spending your time when you're communicating? How are you excited? What words are you using? Are you really sharing your message that you want to share? And are people understanding it? The next part of it is that leaders are really exceptional. Exceptional leaders are really great communicators. They do understand that it's not about them, and when they're creating a message, it really is 100% about the other people. Now, you may be using your own ideas, you may be using your own thoughts, but you want the people to be understanding how they fit into the picture. You want to be able to clearly create this picture that people can understand very beautifully how they see it happening. And that's something that takes an art. Now, Hux has given us some great ideas how to create a speech, and it's a great start, but it does take time. And as part of National Speakers Association, they always told us for every hour that we spend in front of people, you're going to spend at least 8 hours in preparation. And you go, oh wow. I was amazed how long it took me to do this 10-minute presentation. It was almost funny. And so think about those kinds of things and how you practicing before you speak. Even like said, if you're giving the invocation here at Rotary, have you actually taken the time to read it through? And where are your stumbling points? What are you going to find where the communication, where your apostrophes are, et cetera, where your stopping points are? So again, although I think of speaking as being the most important thing as far as communication, it really is listening. So again, as a great leader, you need to have great listening skills. There's nothing in the world that can make a person feel more important when they feel that they are truly listened to, that you're caring about them, that they're important to you. And the best listeners in the world that I have experienced act like there's actually no other person in the room when they're talking to me one-on-one. They're really totally devoted to me, totally give me their attention. And one of the other aspects besides people being cared for, as far as listening goes, they feel that they can trust you also, that you're a person that really can be trusted because they've developed that rapport with you, that relationship with you. The other thing that you need to be doing is to make sure that you sense the moods in a room when you're talking to someone. You know, if there's a lot of hostility, if you feel like there's these little barbs coming at you, if you don't address that elephant in the room before you try to give your message, no one's going to hear it because they want what's on their mind addressed first. So it's really important that you pay attention to what's on people's minds. Are you reading the people's energy? Are they restless? Is there a lot of noise in the room? Is there a lot of joy in the room? And are you expressing that also? So those are parts of things that are really important as far as giving a presentation. And the last one is being able to think on your feet. How many times does someone come up and ask you a question that you're not prepared to answer? You don't have time to think about, wow, what is my best answer? And again, Toastmasters helps you with that. We'll be doing, I forget, Molly, what are you doing? Table topics. It's been a while since I've been in Toastmasters. Table topics, and gives you a chance to think on your feet. So there's just many, many skills that Toastmasters helps us, prepares us to be great leaders and great communicators. Wrapping up, I just want to say the times have changed. Leadership really is different, and these situations that we're going to now is really, really changing things quickly. There are some attributes that make great leaders, and there's some that we need to leave behind. But now more than ever, our people are looking for leaders that are going to show us the way and guide us through these challenging times. And that trust is going to be really important at this point. So how different is it really? More and more successful leaders are in front of their people. They're not only in front of the people that work for them, they're in front of their customers. They're forming relationships with customers, they're hearing what they want. They're literally changing their products almost weekly if possible to respond to what their customers are asking for. And this is all based on communication and listening and making sure you understand it. Really great leaders are also open about themselves. They're vulnerable. They talk about their personal lives. People know them as real people, not just as a robot at the top of a leadership pyramid. They want to know who this person is. Come out of your office, come out of the tower, and get around and get to know people. If there's one place where most leaders fall short, it's communication, because it's simply not possible to have people know who you are and know what you want and what you believe in if you're not good at communicating it. When I said being a good communicator, I also want you to realize it just doesn't mean that you're a good talker. We can talk a lot, but the important is are we communicating the message we want to hear, we want people to hear. So your own approach to leadership will depend on really whether you think of leadership as a noun or something you observe. You don't want it to be like a uniform that you may wear that come into work for the day, or something that you put on when you walk in the door. Leadership is really a verb. Leadership is about acting, and leadership is really about who you are. And until people know that part of it, they aren't going to hear your message either. So where do you stand? What is leadership for you? And how are you going to inspire people to want to follow you? Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Our third speech, and our third speaker is Mike Leahy. Mike joined the Rotary Club over 32 years ago, and he is one of the longest-serving Rotary Picnic Committee members. He first got involved in Rotary in his high school Interact Service Club. Mike first joined Toastmasters after college. His father was a Toastmaster and recommended that he join. For the icebreaker speech, we have Mike Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. The icebreaker speech is typically the first speech that a new member would give, and it can be on any topic. And today, I've had the opportunity to tell you something about myself. And that's where we want to start. As Steve says, I have been in Rotary for 32 years, and my dad was the president of his Rotary, of his Toastmasters Club, and he had been encouraging me for years to join after I got out of college, and I did join when I was in my 30s. This was in Indianapolis, and it was a fantastic foundation for talks, because I give talks all the time, not as a stand-up talking, but I demonstrate software all the time, and Rotary has, Toastmasters has helped that tremendously. So what I want to talk about today is this lifelong interest that I've had in things that are old. The older, the better. And it started when I was about 8 years old. I was visiting my grandparents' home in rural Connecticut, and my brother and I were rummaging around. I was 8 years old and he was 7 years old, and we were rummaging around in the garage, and I found this box. And inside the box, it was just filled with postcards and letters, and they were all in German. So I asked my grandmother, well, what's the deal here? And she told me that these were postcards and letters that were written to my grandfather when the two of them were immigrating from Austria to Panama, and my grandfather worked on the Panama Canal. So I just thought this was the greatest thing. These were really old. They had Austrian stamps on them. I couldn't read any of the words, but I was just intrigued with them. So my grandmother gave these to me, and I still have them. And I ended up writing a book about my grandparents immigrating from Austria during World War I to the Panama Canal and then immigrating to the United States. So this thing started off my interest in old things. A year or so later, I went to a family reunion for my other set of grandparents, and I had a distant uncle who was there, and he brought a photo with him, and it was a photo of my great-great-grandfather. And I just was intrigued by this photo, and on the back side of the photo, it traced my great-great-grandfather immigrating from Ireland, and gave the whole history of his brother. He was one of 16, and he immigrated in around 1850 at the height of the famine that was going on in Ireland. So these childhood events really got me started on things that are old, and to the point where I was a stamp collector, old stamps. I was a coin collector, old coins, anything that was old. I used to be married to a woman whose family lived on the same farm for 150 years. So the barns were filled with old things and antiques. I was in heaven. I even found a 100-year-old shotgun up in one of the buildings. It was just great. So about 30 years ago, I was looking for a home to restore. I was looking for an old home to restore, and I found an old home in Hyde Park. It hadn't been painted over. The woodwork was original. So I scraped up the money, and my wife and I, well, she was my fiancée at the time, we scraped the money together, bought the house. She told me afterwards it wasn't really the house that she would have purchased, but we bought the house, and then we spent the next 10 years stripping all the woodwork, and we now have just, it's like new inside. The woodwork, the wood that's in the older homes is just fantastic. So this interest that I have in old things also extends to old cars. And I've been on the Concord d'Elegance, this is the Alt Park Concord d'Elegance Committee for the past 40 years. And my company is the sponsor of one of the old luxury car classes from the 1930s. So it even extends to the cars. Another event that was early that changed and created this interest in old things is another event. My brother and I were rummaging around in the house, and we found my dad's World War II box. All of his events from World War II, his medals and good behavior, all this kind of stuff. And in there we found hundreds and hundreds of 35 millimeter negatives that had been developed, but they had never been printed. And the story here is that my dad was in Africa and was in Europe, and you could get film developed, but it was too expensive to have them printed. So my brother and I, we printed a few of them, but we lost interest. There were just too many. So a few years ago, I bought a special scanner, and I scanned all 350 of the negatives, and then I started printing them, and I ended up writing a book about my dad's adventures in World War II, excuse me. My dad never carried a gun. He never wore a helmet, and he was a cryptographer. So he started off in Africa, and he was supporting the invasion, the southern invasion of France. You recall Normandy is at the top. That's where all the bad things were happening. By the time that was over again, France had been liberated, and then the United States and British came in from the south. So I decided that I would write a book about these adventures, and I would include these old photos. To kind of give you an idea, my dad visited 13 countries. He was stationed in 13 countries. He climbed to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. He learned Italian. He saw the second eruption of Mount Vesuvius. And on top of this, he was involved in a private interview, a private event with the Pope. So I wrote about this and published another book about this. So this interest that I have in old things, I could talk forever about this, but we only have our 4 to 6 minute Toastmasters icebreaker speech. So we can't talk about this anymore today, but I want to leave you with a suggestion. Think about the next time you're in a really old home, think about who was in that home, who lived in that home, who visited that home over the past 100 years or 200 years, whatever it might be. And if we just take it to this room has been here for 80 years, and the Hall of Mirrors has been here for 80 years. And just think about, when you have lunch here as a Rotarian, think about who have been the people over the past 80 years that have attended not only Rotary meetings, but social events or weddings. Downstairs, the Hall of Mirrors is the utopian place for a couple to have, if they can afford it, to have their wedding. So just think about all of these things that have gone on in that room. So thank you for this opportunity today to tell you something about myself in the icebreaker speech.
Thank you, Mike. Our second part is table topics, and to talk about that, we have Molly Rydell.
Thank you. Good morning, Toastmaster of the Day, fellow Toastmasters, and all of our in-person and Zoom guests. I'm here to talk about table topics. Table topics help our members practice the art of improvisation and also helps us think on our feet. This helps us develop 4 vital communication skills: listening, thinking, organizing, and delivery. I've prepared a handful of topics that will hopefully help all of us become better at improvisation. Since Toastmasters try to provide a speaking opportunity to maximize audience members, this session is not restricted to members alone. Even guests can participate. So here's how it works. I select a member from either the audience or a member, and then you will be provided with a topic, and it will be a very easy topic, and you speak on that topic for just 1 to 2 minutes, and I'll provide the easy topic for you. Who in the audience would like to participate? You don't even have to come up on stage. You can just sit in your seat and talk for something about 1 minute, and it's an easy topic. All right, Terry Dean in the back. Okay. Maybe you can come forward so we can hear you better. Thanks, Terry, you're a trooper. Okay, here is your topic. Is there anything you won't change when COVID ends?
Well, you know what? One of the good things about COVID is I've spent more time with myself. I've enjoyed the serenity the time down. I also have appreciated the technology that we've had to get us through this. I try to imagine what it would have been like if we didn't have Zoom and the interconnection that's given us if we were totally isolated and couldn't stay with each other. The other thing is it's given me the opportunity to commit to a regimen, a physical regimen, where I, most days, will do 2 to 3 miles. Go out and do 15-minute miles, and it has, certainly had the health benefits. A lot of people felt that COVID was something that created weight issues. Fortunately for me, because I've got the time now to do the walking, it's kept my weight down, and so that hasn't been a problem. So I think there's good things that have come out of COVID, but probably the biggest thing is we've appreciated what we did have and didn't have for a while. The friendships, shaking hands, just being around people and being comfortable, walking into a restaurant and not having to think about it. So there's things that I will carry with me as a result of COVID, and the things, there will be those things that I'll look forward to going back to. Thank you.
All right. Good job, Terry. All right, we'd like to do 2 or 3 other 1-minute presentations. Is there someone else from our audience who would like to speak on a very easy topic for 1 minute? Oh, Steve, I knew you would do it. Okay. Okay.
All right, what are you going to hit me with?
Okay, Steve, here is your topic. What is one downside of the modern world?
Gosh. Can I talk about COVID? One downside of the modern world. I guess I was thinking about this just yesterday. I was talking with a client on Zoom. I have, like Terry, been blessed with this technology that allows my business to go on, even though we can't get together face to face. And I have felt that Zoom creep into my life, and I'm finding my work day is getting a little longer than it was in the past. And while Terry's been able to take walks and perhaps find a little more time for serenity, I have found my evenings have taken on a little bit longer period of time where maybe there's a Rotary training that now is at 7 p.m. and dragging into 8:30. Maybe there's another club or another work function that's creeping into my evening time. And I have 3 young children, and they're all in school, and their teams are having parent meetings, and their teachers want to have face-to-face meetings. I don't know. I think there's a certain amount of technology that is creeping into our lives that it's not gonna relinquish that connection. And Zoom is going to rule our lives for some time to come, and it has its blessings, but certainly the 24 hours in the day is still the same. So I'm not quite sure how it's all going to work out, Molly, but I think we'll all have to stay tuned to see if we can get some of our life back from Zoom. Thanks.
All right, Steve. Good job. All right, well, let's do one more. And do we have any more guests from the audience who would like to give it a whirl? All right. Well, was that a hand raise, Russell? All right. Thank you, Russell. Okay, come on. All right, I'm looking for an easy question for you.
I like easy. Easy is good.
Here's your easy question. What is your earliest childhood memory?
My earliest childhood memory. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master, for this important question that burns on everyone's mind, because everyone wants to know what my earliest childhood memory is. And in this, I am demonstrating a stalling technique that speakers oftentimes use to let the brain whirl back in the background. So earliest childhood memory is probably that of being very young, probably I was still old enough to be on the bottle. And I remember, I have this vivid memory of being in the bedroom where Mom and Dad had sequestered me and asking for a bottle of grape juice, not milk or anything. So I must have been old enough to communicate, but I got a bottle of grape juice. I have a mental picture of the door with the door frame still cracked. I'm in the dark and the light is coming in comes Mom giving me the bottle of grape juice. I have no idea age or anything, but if you're stretching that far back, that's the earliest one I've got.
That's good. That's a good memory. You've got a better memory than I do. Okay, let's do one last question, and why don't we get a volunteer from a Toastmaster member for this last question? Do we have any volunteers up here? First one up.
All right, I'll go.
Okay, Nance. Okay, here is your question. What's the best advice you've ever heard on public speaking?
Gosh, that's hard because I've had so much advice being a member of National Speakers Association for 20 years. But the one that I think about all the time, actually, I'm going to talk about two of them. There is one that talks about to remember that the butterflies are going to be there. And so rather than trying to get rid of them, to have them fly in formation.
Oh.
So that they're just kind of like flying with you and keeping you happy. So that was the one that I think about most often. And the other one I remember, this was from another member of National Speakers Association who was also a minister that had great advice. And he was remembered to always think about that I'm here to serve rather than shine. So I think about those two. And again, it helps me practice my own advice from this morning to make the message about other people.
Excellent. Good job, Nancy. All right. Okay, and that concludes Table Topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Okay, part 3, evaluator. Uh-oh. Steve Dreifel and Huck Schmiller.
Well, we heard a lovely talk by Mike, and it was a chronological talk, wasn't it? It was very well put together. It started out with history of his father and seeing the Austrian stamps and the photo of his great-grandfather, and then, when he was a young man, stamps and coins and old things, and then got to the point 30 years ago when he came up with the old home. And he used some humor, didn't he? Because here, what a great home that there's so much that can be done, and everything is so old. And his fiancée said it wasn't quite the house she would have chosen. So that was, and then we heard about his old cars, and his father's World War II box. And one of the things that makes a good speech is when it calls up memories, your own memories. Because I remember my dad's souvenirs from World War II, and I'd really love to know where his officer's hat went, because I don't have it anymore. The one thing I would have said is, I thought the ending was, you're talking about looking around. I didn't think that had a lot of punch. I mean, I thought everything that was chronological and this, that was good. But all in all, great talk, and it makes me want to read the books. And then it was also very much of a geographical talk also, because we heard about North Africa, and we heard about southern France, and we heard about the Panama Canal. And again, my father was in North Africa in World War II, and he learned Italian also. So, great speech. Thank you very much for giving it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, everyone did a superb job. There was no slipshod performances here today. My role as the awe counter is to note words and sounds that are used as a crutch or pause filler by anyone who speaks. So during the meeting, I was taking little notes, putting little marks down for overused words such as and, well, but, so, you know. I also listened for filler sounds, including x, I also notice and note when a speaker repeats a word or phrase such as I, or this means. So this is not to embarrass anyone, but to help the fellow Toastmaster to improve their public speaking. Because everybody at a Toastmaster meeting will eventually make a speech, become an awe counter, along with other roles. So just as a quick overview here, Hux, as an example, who was up here many, many times, had 4 ahs, a couple ums, a couple so's, a few ands, and some repeats. Russell, it must be because he's a minister, had a clean slate. Nancy had a few ums, a couple so's, some ands. Mike Leahy had a few ahs, 4 ums, 4 so's, a couple repeats, and a few ands. Molly had 1 and an and Steve only had a couple ahs, an and a repeat, and maybe that's because he's out there selling insurance all the time. So as an awe counter, that's what we do for the meeting, and it's all there again to improve people's public speaking techniques. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'll keep that in mind. Last up, timers report. Andy Megenheim.
I was asked to keep time for today. We didn't do a formal red light, green light, yellow light thing. But Hux, you were at 12 minutes. Nancy, your presentation was a little bit over 16. Mike, you hit 8 minutes exactly. And Molly, you were exactly at 10.
Thank you.
Well, before ending, we like to give people a chance to do happy news. But even before that, I would like to thank this team, because this was clearly a team effort. Steve as our Toastmasters, Nancy and Mike as our speakers, word of the day, Russell. I mean, in no way was any of this a slipshod effort. And Molly Rydell has never been in a Toastmasters meeting, and yet she stood up, and by golly, she was our head of table topics. And Steve, thank you so much for being the awe counter, and Andy Megenheim as the timer. And then Terry Dean has been sort of our he's our utility infielder. I mean, if anybody fell over and had a stroke, Terry was going to be there to make sure this was not a slipshod epidemic. So
And Hux is our Gandalf.
Oh, well. Thanks. So one of the things we always do at Toastmasters, in case somebody has not had a chance to speak, is we have happy news. Does anybody have any happy news that they would like to stand up and communicate? I can always think of some. Oh, good. Okay.
Finally, after a year, I can have dinner with my son.
Oh, Nancy.
I have happy news because I finished my taxes on Tuesday.
And I have some happy news because on Tuesday, my best friend and I got to go bicycling because it was over 50 degrees and not raining. So. Well, thank you very much for coming, and I think we're right on time. So we will see you all at the meeting in about 45 minutes. Thank you.